Okay, it's supposed to be working. It's supposed to be broadcasting. I didn't test my audio.
Testing, testing, testing.
Tap, tap. Yep, yep.
Hmm.
And so I'm going to do my advertisements.
It's 5:30. I was supposed to stop eating at 4:30. Oh my god. ChatGPT. Okay.
Okay, looks like we are working.
Okay, I got that.
I hear you.
Your volume is still on. The crime of the century.
Okay.
Okay. What have I got going on here?
Greetings, Finch. Uh, Saying greetings to Sawyer and Kathy.
Hello.
And sound is good. Finch says, thank you for that sound check.
Check, check.
Check, check.
Check out my melodies.
We realized we didn't talk about much of what was supposed to be on what's on the tape. So we wanted to come back because we got questions which we loved getting. Um, but want to get back to the tape contents. So I just got to share this with my Facebook friends and my Twitter X friends.
I almost wish I had an X account now. Because it's probably blowing up over there.
Um, is it? Oh yeah, it probably is, right?
Yeah, that like just dropped.
The war between Trump and Musk. So there'll be a conspiracy that'll be uh, that they made the whole thing up.
I don't think so.
And
Trump is known to have falling out with,
no,
he
but
uses people
it's a
and
joke. So they're gonna come back after going through a whole bunch of stuff, and then they'll say it's a joke.
I don't think he's going to come back. Elon has a pretty big ego.
Yeah, I
And
think
so
you're
does
right.
Trump.
I think you're right. I was just making it up.
I mean, I could be wrong. I probably am. Maybe they're just having a little spat.
Right, it's a little
And as
spat between
Carolyn Levitt
billionaires.
would say, boys will be boys. But I think the last person she said that about got fired.
Okay, so I called this
About Waltz.
the
The
Space
Space
Kingdom
Kingdom.
Information Center Scientific Evolutionary and Creationist Vernacular. It's not a bad title, is it?
No.
So
Why did you call it that?
I'm not going to talk about why because I'm going to go right to reading it because Doe wrote it. The, the press release for it.
A proposed press release.
Yes, it was a draft. Right. Like, he didn't say that was a draft. He just said these were the thoughts he had for a press release.
Because you
And
guys didn't end up making that
no, we
place.
didn't. I don't think we didn't. I don't know if we had a pamphlet, though, at one point. We did have a bunch of preparation for the Sexaholics Anonymous
Yeah, that's coming up
effort.
next, I believe.
Yeah.
Don't get distracted.
I am distracted.
I know.
It's my middle initial.
Is it? I thought it was R.
Yeah.
Bless you.
So,
The Space Information Center.
yeah, and it's got this other thing on the screen here,
Oh,
so that I'm prepared to read it. That'll work. So, that's what it says on my screen there. That's the same screen as the last live stream, so, uh, but it's number one, the first point on that screen is those draft for a press release. And this is, we wrote this, tried to write verbatim, this one, trying to quote him. And then the Space Kingdom Information Center has acquired offices at address, which they hadn't determined yet, for the purpose of preparing of materials that will be made available to the public regarding the 12-year effort of their team. Their exploratory theories and disciplines have caused them to believe that space is physically inhabited by a kingdom level higher than the human kingdom, and that its entry is scientific, though because of the type of disciplines and keenness needed to aspire to it, is usually labeled religions or cultish by most humans. Boy, does that say a lot, doesn't it? That was his his ideas at the time.
what
And
time was that again?
the time of that was um, July 16th, 1987. And so without trying to um, kind of highlight the different parts of that, because I could spend an hour doing that. Um, I wanted to go on to the second point that I wanted to bring up from the tapes, and I labeled that helping humans evolve into members of the evolutionary kingdom level above human. And uh, so, um, I mean, even using the term level, I think, though, would think has a, a, a spiritual connotation, because it's not like kingdom does, but it doesn't at the same time, because people in science know that the word kingdom uh, is talked about in textbooks, I think, as uh, evolutionarily speaking, like plant, mineral, plant, animal, and human. But I don't think they think of themselves. I don't think humans think of ourselves as the human kingdom. I don't know. Maybe people do.
I don't know. I don't think
I,
I thought about it that way before.
yeah, I never did either. But I didn't think about much before,
I did.
because I was still in my yeah, you did. Yeah, because, right. We all go through our pathways. But vernacular is what this tape is mostly about. And I didn't say what tape it was, did I?
261.
261.
Continuation of 260.
Continuation of 260. That 260 was talking about the astronaut training manual.
Well, and it's listed as the same day.
Right, it's listed as the same
Sorry
day.
to interrupt you.
No, that's good. That's good. I want astronaut training manual, mind's development, vibrations. And when they say vibrations, they're talking about frequencies, not the spiritual thinking of vibrations, even though they're the same thing, I think, but put in a non scientific vernacular, I guess, when you say it as
Vibration.
yeah, like good vibrations, like the Beach Boys song, which was the way that you got the vibe.
Right.
You only want to have good vibrations when you know there's also negative vibrations. So, but anyway, but it's more clinical. In other words, to but the certain words that they used, even though they had a connotation of spiritual, was still worth using because they wanted to always have little, the use of tantalizing terms in the sense of wanting people to take a bite, be curious about it. They've never heard a word used that way, and something about it they want to look into a little bit. And so the next level are the masters of that.
Now I think this is done.
Oh wow, still has it with the white that you left into it.
Yeah, and there's not too much.
Do you want to see Kathy's latest?
It's still maybe a little wet. I think it's done now. I think it's done. It takes a while to show up, Alright, so I got a bunch more.
I'm not holding it right. So.
No, I think you are. It's cool. Alright.
There we go.
What is that red line on the thing there?
That's the way the screen looks for OBS.
Oh, interesting.
It's not in the broadcast.
I'm sorry, I distracted you once again.
Did you?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, I know where I was.
I just was so excited I finished finally. Okay.
But I will go back my screen because I brought up that other screen. And also this screen. There you go. Nobody's saying anything in the chat. I guess we do it early in these broadcasts, and there's less people that are back from work or whatever people are doing during the day. But I'm glad to just have Finch here. It's
Me too.
yeah. So and when the critics get this, they can have all kinds of things to say about Doe's press release. Okay. But it really was exactly what he was saying. In his mind, it really was all these things. It was exploratory theories. Now, to him, some people I think say that a theory is actually something that's proved by some evidence, but by a scientific method of some sort, where a hypothesis, or maybe it's reverse. Is a hypothesis something that's been proved, and a theory something that hasn't been proved?
Hypothesis is what you're
Making
proposing.
proposing,
Here's
proposing
my
something.
hypothesis, and
Right.
then I'm gonna do the experiments,
Right.
tests.
So this is the good way of using the word. See, I always thought of theories as being like the same thing as the hypothesis.
No, I think it's what you come to after you've done all that.
Yeah. Right. So I'm glad we're getting that clearer in my head that that's how it's meant by Doe. Because he wasn't questioning whether this was true or not, but the whole thing was an exploration. Because he was always seeking more understanding and more mind from his older member, to be honest with you, directly.
Not supposed to be eating, but I didn't eat that much because I slept for an hour and a half.
That's right. And you're your own commander when
Alright,
it comes to what you do, babe.
I'm just gonna eat.
Anyway, so the exploratory theories and disciplines have caused them to believe that space is physically inhabited by a kingdom level higher than the human kingdom, and that its entry is scientific, though because of the type of disciplines and keenness needed to aspire to it, it usually labeled religions or cultish by most humans.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot.
I read that second half again, and there's because he's showing how when you discipline your vehicle, self-discipline, you're actually strengthening your mind, and when you're doing it based on what the next level has given you, then you're strengthening your mind towards membership in the next level. Where if you're doing it without that connection, that belief, and that conscious uh, um, belief in who T and O are and all that entails, even though you're going to have questions still, um, uh, when you're not in that mode, then I think what they were teaching was that you were part of the human pool of mind. And that human pool of mind also gets to experience life through a vehicle again. Because they can take that pool or even parts of it and bring it back to a new civilization in order to seed the planet with certain thoughts that came about during that previous civilization's development. So I can imagine that if you wanted to introduce to the civilization the idea that electricity could be harnessed, then then I imagine the next level uh, could actually bring somebody, bring a, they could have well, it might even be kind of automatic to some degree, but a lab can help it happen to where that discarnate entity, or even one of the space alien souls, they allow to bring that information to the humans that are just developing that information in order to stimulate their thoughts. Or the next level may do that directly from their spacecrafts and just give somebody an idea, somebody that is asking. And that's probably more the way it happens. I was just coming to think about it because the other way of thinking, uh, you get a whole bunch of other stuff. If you like take, let's say there's a spirit that was a human and he learned or she learned how to uh, split the atom. Okay, I'm going to start with an easy subject to think about, right? Um, uh, but the problem is, you also with that spirit, if you're going to bring that spirit back to influence somebody, they may do it. They may do it. I'm not sure. But you would potentially, I think, my common sense tells me a little bit, and I could be wrong about this, um, that you also get with that the other aspects of that person's thinking that was living during the time that they were split. Let's say it was Einstein, and and he provided some of the mathematical tools to figure out that such a thing could be done to split an atom. and to start the experimentation on it. But probably the better example is, discovering electricity, because Tiendo used that example of how the next level gave them that information. I'm trying to diagnose it, or not or describe it and dissect it. It's just fun to do, I guess. But because I'm also exploring how these things are working in a technical way. And that's not an exploration. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's when we think we've arrived at it uh, that we're going off the track. Because the best we can do is arrive at a part of that understanding, or that concept, or that idea, or that mathematical formula, or um, it's like, what if math came as a result after the creation of life forms? You know, uh, by people dissecting it. I don't know. That may be a stupid thought, but
What if what came?
um, what if mathematics, came about um, by people dissecting um, how um, things worked in the material world? I guess when I know they were doing it before, long before. I mean, math. I'm not talking about like addition and subtraction. I'm talking about all these formulas and everything. For creating substances, I guess, is like algorithms. Like in an accounting company, they have algorithms to do the calculations of how much money gets taken out of somebody's check, based on, their how many dependents they have and all the IRS laws and all that. So I'm thinking that, the same thing might be happening uh, uh, in all kinds of different scientific applications. And even in the formation of words, right? The language, and the study. I guess this is talking about like the study of numerology, or the codex, or you know, where they say they see messages. I've seen some of the documents that people say, it's the codex when everything is reduced to a number in like the Bible, that it shows patterns that are certain words when it shows patterns within the alphabet, because that's, I guess, what they use for it.
Well, it spells out things.
It spells out things,
The
right?
Bible code.
Right,
It's not called codex. It's called the Bible code.
right. But they're doing that with math, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to describe. Yeah, the Bible code, right? But some people do call it, I think, the codex. But maybe there's another. Is there another thing that's called the codex?
Yeah, codex I think is, I don't know, you have to look up the definition of it, but like a lot of things could be called that.
No, I mean referring to the biblical information.
It's like an index or something.
Oh, okay.
That's like a generic word.
No, I understand that, but if we search on codex, I think we'll see some of what I'm talking about. Maybe I got it wrong, but
No, I think you're right. I'm just saying that's also like a generic word.
yeah, right. So anyway, that's getting way off the track. But
Sorry.
no, not you, baby. Uh, Mig, I went into that. I dove into the math analogy that, from my imagination. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just it doesn't amount to anything. And that's interesting, though, that I'm going to tie that into what I think Doe said in tape 261 about religion, that it doesn't add up to anything. Does it? I don't know if he used the words add up, but that's what I got when he said it. I'll try to look for that in my notes. It doesn't do anything. Maybe that's what he was saying. It does. It doesn't. Um, it doesn't have a direction to go in, except to, you know, believe that you are part of it, and that you'll, if you live a good life and you adore some savior, that you'll wake up in the rose garden, or you wake up a butterfly from the caterpillars. You'll be in the kingdom of heaven because of that belief. And you can see where that's, that's what T and Do said in the first statement that they wrote. You can see that in the Heaven's Gate book. In 1973 they wrote it. Do wrote it when he was in jail. And then they mailed it out to a whole bunch of people from Ojai, California, where they were staying with someone named, I think, Berta, who they were very fond of. And he helped them by giving them a place to, get out of the weather and have some sustenance. I don't know to what degree, because, I mean, they had money at the time. Whatever T earned while Doe was in jail, because that's what T did. She went back to her nursing job in Houston. And I don't know if she related with Terry during that time. But you would think that she might have. I won't say would have, but the thing is, that she knew, and I think they even talked about when we were talking about uh, visiting and relating to our families, or even having our families relate to us and come out to whatever facility we were living in and see how we were living, and so that they could not have all these negative ideas about us floating around in their heads that humans had created about us. And one of the things that Doe was concerned about at the time was that you wouldn't ever be part of their life again, because if you stayed in that direction, because the whole purpose of that direction was to put all your energy into becoming this new creature from the inside out. That's where some of them get it right. We have to change our insides to match closer and closer to what the next level mind is feeding us by our drawing from their mind, by our seeking it, by thirsting for it. And so if you invite relatives that don't have that belief, and they really liked what you were doing, well, I don't know. I don't want to play it out, but it was just one of the things that Doe didn't want to start that. If they had a lot of trouble with that individual member of the class leaving their life with those individuals, like going to their weddings and births and deaths and all the things that humans do with each other and families and friends, that you'd be rekindling that pain, because you weren't going to plan to go have that kind of relationship with them anymore. And another concern that Doe had was that if we open those doors, then they would start to want to, have more. Some of them would want to write more and have a pen pal kind of thing, and have your phone number, and so if something happened, they could call. And if that was happening for the entire class, there'd be always somebody that was not there, because they'd be flying to the East Coast in order to be a part of this event, so that you know, we were pleasing the members of the family and friends that we had. And that might not seem like a big deal unless you really begin to understand uh, a little bit, at least, of the enormous task that it is to go from moving into a new kingdom level with your mind and and uh, and and taking control of your vehicle uh, to the nth degree of its thoughts and its actions in order to be compatible with a next level vehicle that's grown for you. Um, and you know, if I was listening to somebody say this 20 years ago, or no, not 20 years ago, 40 years ago, yeah, I'm pretty old.
You were listening to somebody say it.
I know. That's what I was going to bring up. Uh, uh, but but saying that it's the hardest thing that a human can do. Whenever T and Do would say that in different ways that they would say it over the years, I would wonder why it was so hard. I would think, what's so hard about it? This doesn't, I didn't play that out in my head. I didn't dwell on that question. I mean, I could have. Maybe I should have, voiced that question. But, it wasn't part of the classroom to voice every thought that you had, uh, but to learn what thoughts uh, would, if we continued to entertain them, lead to leaving the classroom. So they were teaching that right from the beginning, like thinking about the past. But that doesn't apply to people now, just like leaving everything behind doesn't apply to people now. But it doesn't mean that that's not something that somebody can do, and they can do that for the next level. And the next level, I'm sure, would be smiling on them, but they would still have to get a lot of lessons because it is an enormous task to recognize all the ways that we are human and at least stop those actions from taking place and then stop the thoughts that are taking place around those actions that actually stimulate the actions as well. And the emotions and everything that's with all that. It's like our genes are like firing like crazy. All these human characteristics, and so it's only when you know um, that goal, which I feel like I know, and uh, um, that, and then you have experiences in the human kingdom with the human vehicle, not outside the human vehicle, because that experience, I don't know if it's really experience, uh, that you begin to understand how hard of a task it is to switch your behavior and ways to a entirely different way of thinking. Um, and the members of the next level, they don't think like humans any more than humans think like dogs or cats or uh, except when they do have things in common, of course, and do have certain amounts of communication, but they're not the same. There's a huge gap. They talk about that I think, in the record books, that there's a chasm of difference between the next level of the kingdom of God and the human kingdom. And I think they talked about that in terms of the dead also, that it was a chasm of difference between the world of the dead and the world of the living humans. Maybe that's how they used it, and I'm applying it to both sides of the coin, so to speak, which I think it does apply. Uh, and uh, and Doe talks about this in this tape, 261, where he's talking about how T is when she's outside the vehicle at the time when they were talking about this in 1987. So she was thought to be on in a lab of some sort, uh, on a spacecraft of some sort, um, doing all kinds of tasks that T has to do, and one of those tasks, even maybe the priority task, is to try to give Doe and the class the thoughts, the ideas that um, they wanted to see developed in the class members, because this was an astronaut training manual that they were writing, by experience. It was experiential. The classroom was an experiential classroom to learn how to be an astronaut in the next level, a God astronaut, a true God astronaut, to use the creationist terminology. Which is, and that's why it was so good to see when people started talking about the ancient astronauts. Like in Peru and with the Incas and the other groups of people from long ago that probably had experiences with in a different civilization, with or maybe even experiences with the space aliens if they when they were let out of um, their jail cells. They're still in prison. We're in prison now too with the space aliens. We're all it's one big prison, and but we've been given the keys to leaving the prison, and that's a process. The keys are coming through T and Doe. They're the only ones with the keys. It's designed that way. Well, all the facsimiles all have little pieces of the keys. All the little knobs that's on a key. So they have different ones of those. And I don't know. Maybe all the other ones have been ground down into so that they don't even fit the lock anymore. But the lock on the door to the evolutionary level above human membership. Okay. I like to play with these things. Sorry. Thank you. So helping humans evolve into, I already read that one. Okay, so um, well, I didn't read what was underneath that regarding point number 2 on my list there, helping humans evolve into members of the evolutionary kingdom level above human. It says, here, Doe is talking about ideas and ways of approaching writing further, a task all the students had at one point then, to bring our information to the public for the second time after 12 years of silence. The challenge was the vernacular because of the way humans have come to think in the various religions and verses are the religions versus scientific mindsets. So humans have come to think in those mindsets, that terminology, uh, and yet and then the next thing Doe says, I'll read that instead of talking about it from my notes, is that Doe says that the religion intelligent minded people will see how they have misinterpreted things. In other words, by seeing the information that they're talking about, and they're making a little pamphlet for this office, this is what their thinking was at that time, uh, um, and putting out this press release somewhere to attract some attention, but saying very little about them. And he talks a lot about that in 261. But then he says that the people that are religious intelligent minded people, that's not just religious minded, that's religion and intelligence, which there's plenty of. Did I spell religion wrong? Religion, right? Right, I spelled it wrong there. I put an E on religion. Anyway, but so he says that those individuals will see how they misinterpreted things, talking about Scripture. Or I'm not just talking about Scripture in the context of that word's use as Christian material, but all the religious material is all in that same vein of thinking. Uh, a lot of words and saying very little, and generalizations, and pick and choose what parts you believe in and what parts you don't, and sometimes rightfully so, because it is the result of distortions and dilutions of whatever next level member gave at that time. So it's all part of the way that the garden grows, to have all these different ways of thinking about things, so that the ones that are thirsty in those experiences, because the evolution has taken place enough to where people question enough things that were said in the past, that they can bring to the table. I'm trying, but I don't want to lose the thought.
Nope, don't lose it.
But
Bring to the table.
Let's see. Well, regardless of whether I actually complete that thought 100%, I mean it's got a lot of components to it, and so I'll just go back to what I wrote about it. Well, no, what I wrote about what Doe said. Uh, well, I was trying to get to the misinterpreted part. Uh, you know, saying that at best what the religious have is a misinterpretation of what uh, the whole picture was. They have pieces of it, right? And for instance, like Tiendo felt like the red letters in the Bible were kept accurate enough to be used by them but mostly for us and those that gravitated to Tiendo's information afterwards, to be able to use that in order to communicate with people, because it's not somebody's fault if they grew up in a family that was for or against religion, uh, uh, to have either a positive or a negative view of it. Both can be good to experience, because we get on to the next thing that Doe said in the tape 261 about this. the misinterpretation of the truth, the way that the scientific intelligent people will see their information, uh, we'll see how they are off track by just throwing away the religious interpretations. You know what? That wasn't the right throw. I wrote through. I don't edit. I don't edit these things that I write. I mean, I reread the paragraph as I'm doing it, but I'm sloppy. To going back and correcting things, you know. And of course, you know how it is with editing anyway. When proofreading, that's why smart people have their books proofread by somebody else, because they can see a lot of things that others won't see. Like that's why I read the script, the meeting script that Tiendo had developed in 1982, 3, 4. And basically what I said about it was, you know, this spelling was wrong, or this, I had very minimal, but you know, still useful, and it was a task, and I was, you know, really glad to do it. Anyway, so I was saying to the students, talking about writing this book, this manual, this astronaut training manual. He says that if we're careful and work hard, because students were writing this, he wasn't writing the whole manual. No, students had tasks to write on certain subjects and to also generally talk about their lessons. And you'll see that in tape 260 talked about a lot more. That's what was important, not writing the history of the group went to this campground and had so many tents set up, and that's not what they were writing about. I'm not saying that there's not anything wrong with writing about that, like if I was going to write about it, which I have some degree, but that wasn't the task they were doing. Right. That's what we weren't doing. I was part of them. Right. And I still am part of them. You know. But I should never assume that, because we can always get too full of ourselves. It's better to, you know, hope it's the case and take the community. Yes, I believe in T and O in the next level and everything they taught, you know, relative to the stage in which they were teaching it. It all makes sense to me, and what I didn't understand became started to make more and more sense to me. The more and more I see their minds, the more and more I reread their materials and re-listen to the audios and rewatch the videos, and yeah, it's not easy to rewatch videos, because he's coming back with power in those last 4 videos that he made. To me, and it says that, you know, Jesus says that he's going to return with power. And the only power that an older member has is their older member's mind. And that means for Doe, everything that he's learned experientially about how powerful his older member's mind is and how powerful the information is, how true it is. That's why it lasted this long. That's why religions become major religions that have certain systems of belief, and certain practices. And many of them are the same kind of, core practices of, being peaceful among each other, being kind, being tolerant, being patient, uh, um, and being thorough, being flexible. Flexible is a big one. Uh, I mean, they're all big ones, but um, uh, uh, treating people the way that you want to be treated, and like Jesus said, and being friendly and to your neighbor as as you are to yourself. It's the same idea that you're not actually uh, supposed to. I mean, with that idea, do unto others as you have them do to you. That can be twisted, of course, as well. But uh, um, but you are supposed to have a sense of self satisfaction with feeling like you're connected to some degree with your older members. I think there's a lot of satisfaction that comes with that, and because it does provide purpose, ultimate purpose, and uh, to us, and you can say, well, that's just to build your ego, to somebody that is getting that from it, and yeah, you can say negative things about everything, right? So that's fine, for people to, but until people actually experience more and more of what I'm talking about, uh, by by digesting all the teachings from Tiendo and crew that graduated. I'm not When I say crew, I'm not including myself in that crew, even if I am working to some degree for the crew. I want to make it clear that I'm not considering my writings um, something that um, are in the same league as what they wrote. I mean, it might be parts of it are. I hope, because I'm trying to use the mind that they gave me. Uh, but this isn't a memory task. I mean, sure, it's nice to memorize their words, but it's not about like being a parrot. It's about understanding the words and recognizing them and seeing the value in them from Tiendo, the ones that come from Tiendo, and not being afraid to look at that, um, because the influences would want you to be afraid of it. Because look what the media said, right? They said this, they said that, and they did some major. They took traumatic steps at times that affected their physical bodies, and they tried all kinds of fasting that was, some people would say is dangerous, and all the other things that they did. There's people that are critical of, and misinterpreted, and also misunderstood, didn't know exactly what was happening, and didn't know the facts anymore, because uh, the facts get diminished over time. when the next level's not here to kind of keep on reinforcing it. So as long as the next level, as long as there's people talking about what the next level was teaching, then I think there still is the option of souls to be saved. Now, I don't know, Doe said that in so many words. And actually, Junodi talked about it in the away team from deep space as a task to get their information out, to share it with others, because the lower forces don't want it to be shared. Now, how to share it, that's what Doe's talking about in 260. One example. So he's all the things that he tried, in my mind, are the prime examples to use for anybody that wants to do something that might relate to the public. Yeah. And in this case, in this 261, he was at that point he was talking about having a manual that had two sections to it, and one section was more the religious terminology, but not exclusively religious terminology, but enough religious terminology in there to where if there was an intelligent minded person that was uh, uh, in some degree of belief in the religious way of describing the creation of this planet, and the individuals that uh, what their culture believed to be higher thinking, higher behaviors, more good, you know, good to each other behaviors, and not animalistic like with jealousies and all the things that we can all have parts of, you know, or competition. Not, it's another form. I don't know. Next level doesn't have competition. They're all trying to help the humans that are asking for it compete against the lower forces. That's one way to use that word, I guess. I never heard Tiendo describe it that way, so I'll take it back. But because I do want to try to use their words as much as possible and let you know when I'm getting off track, which I just did, in a sense. Not that when you're using your own words to describe them, it's not like it's wrong to use terms that they didn't use. See, that would be a way that the lower forces would try to come in, and you see that evidenced by the people that are sometimes called fundamentalist Christians that believe that the King James Version, the exact words, are the only ways you can talk about, the only thing you should read, the only thing that's true, and that you can't add anything to it, because they put that Revelation statement in the back of it, which was basically saying the same thing that T&O said in their common law copyright, that don't add anything to this or take away from this, but you can use it in parts or as a whole. And you can duplicate it, you can copy it in parts or as a whole, and not do it for profit. Okay, so that was their copyright, and it's the same kind of thing. It seems like to me that John, if John got it right, was given to put that at the end of the Book of Revelation, warning people that if they add to this or take away from it, they're going to have some hell to pay. Yeah, in so many words. Well, not because the next level is going to do something to them. It's not like Next Level is going to send somebody with a pitchfork to stab them in the butt. But then again, they might say, well, maybe you need to have some stronger fertilizer to help you outgrow uh, adding your own stuff to it, to that material. And that would have to do with adding your own stuff to that material that wasn't in that material. But then again, you got interpretations, right? And so I don't know, how to, if I was, sitting on the law court trying to determine when somebody was breaching a copyright, it's crazy actually, those laws.
Well, for the most part, it works how it's supposed to. If you create something and you get a copyright and you register it and something that you created,
Yeah.
then
You don't want somebody else changing it and then passing it off as yours
as theirs.
or
You
as
want
theirs.
somebody, like,
But even as yours, you don't want somebody.
I'm a photographer. I don't want somebody taking my pictures and then using them and making money off of it. That's my damn picture. Why are you making money off my picture?
Right, right. I can understand that point of view, of course.
Or music or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. So copyrights do work. It's just in this case when
No.
people fraudulently got copyrights,
Uh,
the system is not that great.
yeah, I wasn't going there. I just wanted to bring up that. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm sorry I cut you off there, but do you want to get into that anymore? Okay. Being a doofus, but the thing, yeah. So I was talking about that Book of Revelation statement that said that if anybody adds to this or takes away from it. So I do think, maybe I'm wrong about this. You can, add in your $1,000 bill or $100 bill or $10 bill or whatever it is.
Leave me alone. I'm just kidding.
We have a good time together. And, well, I think Kathy's an amazing soul. Anyway, not as amazing as Doe. I'm not using the same context at all, because none of us are
No, of course
in comparison to Doe. But we can have parts of Doe's mind and parts of T's mind in us. And I think a lot of us do have little parts. And little parts can go a long way. Or it can be, dwindle down to nothing. Oh yeah, Casey Strange is here. He says the internet is full of crap like this. Social media is making it worse, but I'm listening as well.
Yeah, the internet is terrible, but wonderful.
Yeah, and okay, so
Terrible and wonderful at the same time.
right, but I don't think when Next Level, when Doe was saying to not add to or take away from their book, to me that meant, like well, not passing it off as theirs, changing it, and then like changing scripture that Jesus said into something else. That's one part of it. I don't know if they said you could use it in parts as well. So that to me means that you could take parts of it, copy it, and then use it to talk about a certain subject. To me, that's an indication of that. They wouldn't have put parts in there, I don't think, if they didn't want people to have the flexibility of doing that. And like another way they talked about that is that they talked about that the audio tapes they felt would be cataloged. Well, no, if you're cataloging something, isn't that automatically going to mean like you're sectioning it off into, different categories of thinking or, teachings. Uh, even time periods, or could be a number of different categories. Could be set like in a library that somebody would do when they were writing the card on what cross-referencing they were going to do. But anyway, so I don't know. That's what I'm going to bring to that discussion at this point, for whatever it's worth. But Casey says, I find the class and even Tila very vulnerable to social media grifters trying to use your content for voyeuristic purposes, or even trying to exploit the fear factor of cults just to grift your next level mind for likes and subs from people who really are just zombies in nature.
Yeah, maybe one of those people will be prompted to go seek further information.
Right,
So,
that's the hope,
yeah,
right?
that's right.
That even the people that are acting that way, with that intention, doesn't mean that they can't change. And think about what they're doing instead of exploiting things
You have to
for
let the next
profit and
level
for
sort
fear
everybody
factor.
out. The next level will sort everybody out.
Right. The next level is the judge, ultimate judge. But however, that doesn't mean that we don't have the right to judge that behavior as some behavior that we don't approve of.
Well, and then just stay away from it.
Right. And be aware of it.
Or call it out.
Yeah. Well, that's what Casey's kind of doing right now,
Yeah,
without being specific, which I don't really want to be specific with it.
right.
But I do that all the time. Whenever I see an article written about the class, Heaven's Gate, I usually say something about it. There's always something to say about it.
It just like gets to a point mentally where it's damaging to like try and tell those kind of people like what you're saying is hurtful, or like that's wrong and you've got it all wrong, and like at some point it just becomes excuse me, you have to let the next level sort them out.
Right. Right.
Like the guy that sabotaged our car, it's like that's just he was vulnerable to the lower force that prompted him to do that. And that's a test, a lesson, a test for us.
Right. And so you have the same things happening with Heaven's Gate information, of course. That there's people that
Sabotage it, yep.
Yeah, they don't necessarily, not even thinking about what they're doing necessarily.
Right. It's just jumping on the bandwagon, like he said, for likes and money and
right, attention. Want to be
like
want
I
to be
said,
seen as
you just have to hope that unknowingly they're actually doing something good by reaching somebody who might not otherwise have heard the information.
Right, that's the good that can come out of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what we have to hope for.
Right, and right. So there's only so much of that vibration that I know Kathy and I really can stand dealing with.
It's tough. It's
so
hard.
So I go to some sites where I know there's more of that going on. Generally speaking, from over the years of observation. I don't go to them on a regular basis. I didn't want to be a part of Discord servers.
Right,
Because
and Reddit, it's so hateful.
Yeah, because there's so many opportunities then for people to
be gross,
talk crap about you, and about T&O's information, and not even know that they are. Think that they're smart. Think that they're intelligent, that they know how to evaluate the situation and size it up, and we get comments like that every once in a while, that somebody that's so certain about their judgment that they're they condemn us, and some of them are religious people. I'm sure, like especially Christians, I imagine. I think some people of the Jewish religion might be more open to some of what we're talking about, but because they aren't glued to the fantasy they created in their heads surrounding Jesus and the whole Christian religious movement. Um, because there's a lot of fantasy in there. It's built in. They don't know what the real Jesus was like, because how could they? It's not like they're like Doe would say about Christians, some Christians, even many, is that they didn't know any better. They didn't have any. They didn't have the true information um, to build their minds from, or in a way that worked for them at the moment. Whatever it's all in degrees, right? But the people that drop away from the religions are the people that go searching for other ideas, and they can get just as embedded in another idea as they were in the previous idea, in the religious idea. They can get embedded into a scientific mindset that even looks at all the things that the religious are saying as fanciful. Like I said it was fanciful, but it's in degrees that it's fanciful. Maybe that's not the word for it, but it is an illusion. The way that Hindu word, Maya, was used for.
That's my.
I know, but it's spelled differently. I think. I think yours, your name has
It's
a
spelled.
different.
Yeah, her name's spelled different.
That name, yeah. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's Maya is what I remember in the Sanskrit.
Well, I think that's Mexican too.
Oh, maybe that's from the Mayans.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe those were Hindus that moved over to this continent
Who knows?
across the ice ages or whatever, the lands that were connecting things at one time, maybe. The way that geologists talk about it. So Casey goes on to say, I mean, that's why I still take issue to this day with people who called Beyond Human tapes initiation tapes, when we know darn well it was just a class going public
That's so annoying.
for the first time. Right, they weren't trying to brainwash people. Uh, the reason they put that, see the word, right, initiation.
That's so stupid.
Yeah, because of the way the connotation with it is that when you join a club or a cult, you have to be initiated, and in some of the cults you have to do some stupid things like a fraternity cult or you know sorority, or I don't know why those ideas came into my head, but I think there are little types of little cultures, little subcultures that have initiation. But also in the military, you have certain boot camp that's an initiation, right? And then in some cults, like some of the people that were working under the Moonies, the Sun Young Moon's disciples, they were required to go to the streets, and they would sell roses to people, and then invite people to come to have food with them in their little headquarters in whatever town they were in. And then when you went to have food with them, which I did a few times, I think, in 1975 and 6, um, uh, before you have food, you have like a talk with one of the leaders in that community, because they're trying to get you to join. so and then you have food. So they're luring you, to the information, because a lot of the people that show up that they contact are homeless, or people like we were at the time. We were homeless, traveling around by car or by hitchhiking, whichever way. Well, I was hitchhiking for part of that time, for about 6 months, but it wasn't the design of T and Doe that I was doing that. But that's the way things worked out. But and that's in my little story on my blog. If somebody wants to see details of that, it's Sawyer HG as in Heaven's Gate, Sawyer HG at .wordpress.com. Um, so anyway, um, but the initiation aspect of it, I can tell you where that came from. I think um, because uh, I'm sure I told somebody in interviews, probably a number of interviews, that the ones that joined in 1994, one of the first tasks they had, if you want to look at it as a task, but it really wasn't looking at it as a task, but as um, they wanted anybody that felt to to be with us, to join us based on a poster and a little talk that we would give, for an hour or two at the most, probably, in a public place. They Some people wanted to join us from that little experience, and we couldn't possibly tell them. So the overseers would have an interview. It wasn't like an interview, like it wasn't scheduled or anything. They would just stay after the meeting, because T and Doe said this as well during the meeting that I attended, the first meeting I attended in Walport, Oregon. They said that there are individuals in the audience, and even said this on the poster, that have decided to give their all to this effort. And so what T and Doe said, that there were individuals in the audience that if you want to get more information, they will answer your questions. And that's when I met Lagodi and Sunodi, I think it was. Because they were sitting in the same row where I was sitting. And I looked over to them right away, and there was nobody in between us. And they were looking over my way. So but I didn't, have any. I didn't care. I wasn't looking at them to see if they were looking at me. That wasn't on my mind. I just wanted more information. I just wanted to be a part of this. And I didn't even really want more information. I just wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to go with them, do it. I wanted to put my all into it. That's what was on my mind. And so what they did then was they said, well, give us a way, here's a phone number to call, and call it at this time, and we'll give you the next step. And so I went to the community where I had been living, and I told all kinds of people that knew me in Newport, Oregon, actually, what I was doing. And then I made the phone call and found out that they wanted us to meet, because they said make the phone call within 2 or 3 days and don't leave a mess. Tie up your loose ends of your life and don't leave a mess. And whatever that meant, I didn't know. Anyway, but and so I went. They said meet us in Eugene, Oregon, at a park. So I went to the park, and I was milling. I was walking around a little bit, and I saw some people like in this one big field, open field of grass in the park, and I couldn't really tell what was going on there, but I was attracted to it, so I started walking towards it, and I saw that two people were sitting at a folding table in the middle of the field, and so I went up to and uh, so I went up to the table and I told them that I was, I received a phone call and to come here, and they said, okay, well, do you have any questions? They asked me, and I said, no, I don't know, I don't have any questions. What's next? And they said, well, uh, finish up tying the loose ends of your life up, and then as quickly as you can, and meet us in Grand Junction, Colorado, near Fruita, at the Colorado National Monument. So I'm not going to go into that story any further, but I'm just trying to point out that there was like degrees of my showing them that I was serious. I had to go out and meet them someplace. I had to go to another place to meet them someplace. And then that's the way it was the whole time in the classroom. I always had to uh, desire to know what was on their minds with Tiendo. And they didn't like that, like Kathy was talking about, certain things that regarding what Casey was talking about that we don't like, and this is the characteristic that is of a member of the next level. So we have the in us, a lot of us have it, have the characteristic of not wanting to be, focusing on the negatives and the people that are doing the negative things, and um, you know, not that there's not a time and a place for it. There is, but it's not anything that somebody with some next level mind would really like doing. They may feel like they have to do it, and they might like some of it because they feel like they're telling the truth about something. I mean, I do like when I'm talking about Tiendo, even though sometimes I am talking to religious and I am taking that point of view that they don't have it right. And I'm trying not to come across that way. I used to come across that way a lot more than I do now. I took a break from all that for years. I actually, before I even met Kathy, I was not doing that much at all because I was seeing how it wasn't really paying off. Paying off meaning uh, by saying so much, I wasn't finding people uh, any more interested. Maybe I could put it that way. Even though I'm not saying it was a waste either, because like we were talking about before, that even the people that are doing negative things, even directly trying to work against Tiendo, and they can always change. I'm not saying that change is easy. It becomes harder and harder to change the further you go down the road of uh, uh, away from wanting to know what Tiendo would do or think about, and so that's just, and that's what's happening to the whole human kingdom. So you're gonna see. I was thinking today. When Kathy brought up, I had heard that Elon Musk and Trump had a falling out on the radio, and but I didn't see many details about it. And then Kathy brought up
The Daily Mail article.
a Daily Mail article that was saying that Elon said that Trump was in the Epstein files, and
And that's why they weren't being released.
and that's why they weren't being released by Dodd. What's her name?
I don't know.
Something Dodd, the Attorney General, or
I don't care.
yeah, whatever. I guess, but because they were still being evaluated, whatever. But but I thought well, yeah, there you go. They're not gonna uh, you got the different space alien groups that are taking their sides with things, and they don't have complete control, I don't think, over humans, what humans think and say.
They're
It's not like
fast.
they're like treating them like they are acting like robots. Many humans. Okay, I'm not saying that that's not the case, but they're robots that are thinking and they're capable of making choices on what they're going to say and do, and the next level wants them to have those choices, and so it doesn't let the space aliens take them over any more than they already can. And but when the next level leaves, then the space aliens have more opportunity to take over humans more uh, with their agenda. And so that's why you see um, Trump with his budget going kind of against a lot of the things he was talking about.
Be careful.
By getting rid of the deficit and getting rid of the fat.
Ooh, the dogs are fighting
Instead
out
instead
there.
of doing what uh, Elon Musk thought he was doing.
I think you should be careful talking about stuff.
Okay, uh, he went
It's
in a different direction. Anyway,
worse now than it was before.
yeah, okay, that's probably good. Good advice because we don't want to get shut down because of a bot looking for certain keywords, which has happened already to my channel with certain subjects.
Yeah, politics being one of them, it seems.
Yeah, and some of them were political, and some of them were medical based, and some of them were uh,
Bible
war based
based.
and Bible
Yeah,
based. It seemed like, but I
really
don't know
did.
if that one was removed because of that linkage of the
It just
Bible to
seemed
that
like all
event.
of them. Seemed
Yeah.
like all of them that they took down were like Revelation, you
Oh.
know.
Oh.
Even though it was it was like the medical stuff or like you said,
But maybe they're actually going
it
through
was
the
weird.
religious people and actually then looking for keywords associated with what they're talking about that they don't want to see talked about by anybody really, but especially by the religious.
I mean, it's the lower forces.
Yeah,
It's very targeted.
right. Because uh,
So
the
evil.
space alien souls
Are
want
bastards.
want to make
Sorry.
Jesus look like a jerk, look
A
like
little Tourette's
a
moment
space
there.
alien. That's what their intent is. And so anybody that says they believe in what Jesus was teaching, they want to make look like a jerk or a hypocrite or have no credit at all, no value at all. In fact, be the opposite of that, be the enemy. Needs to be censored out of conversation, is what some people think, and I think a lot of people in uh, um, the high places and many of the corporations and government agencies in all countries uh, kind of have that, unless they're a theocratic leadership, and then they're off track in another way. You know, by focusing only on the past as their total belief system and thinking that there's no expansion to that past. There's no further development of those ideas from the past. All the religions are guilty of that. That's why you see them. They're rich. They're all filthy rich. They can afford to live in mansions
Well, these
and
big churches,
big
it's like
cathedrals and
who's going to these places?
yeah, and
There's like
and
one on
and
every
have people
block.
waiting on their hand and feet, cooking for them. And
Crazy.
I mean, I know there's a bunch that cook for themselves and stuff, but you know, so they've made a career out of believing in the next level and for the purpose of their own advancement into membership of the next level. Instead, their advancement is how many people believe that they are the representatives of the next level on Earth. And people automatically fall into that belief. And they fall down crying in front of the leaders of the religious communities. And so when people of more intelligence see that happening, it sends a message, a strong message. And when you hear about all the things that, the atrocities that were created by the religious, in the name of their religion, how could you not go away from them, and not want to be associated with them, not give them any credit at all. But at the same time, you don't know what you're throwing away by not giving them any credit at all, because you don't understand where they got that information and why it became so distorted and diluted.
But is you caught up with the chat?
No. So Doe had us give the audio tapes from the Beyond Human series to all the new individuals that were attempting to join us after meetings in 1994. But there was no regulation on who watched what and when and how often. Because I was a witness to this, because in the group that I was overseer of with, I think at the time, Chuck Odie maybe, we sometimes had hotel rooms. At first we were able to pay for hotel rooms, but then we ended up getting them donated to us.
This was in
94. And in the situation I'm talking about, after a meeting, some individuals wanted to join us, but also Doe sent some individuals that joined into another group to spend time with us. So anyway, but the task that Doe gave to us was to give them the tapes to listen to. So they were in a different hotel room from the rest of that crew, which was about 6 or 7.
The Beyond Human tapes.
Yeah, the Beyond Human tapes, the videotapes, the whole series, because that was the only way they were going to actually learn about Doe.
Get a crash course.
Because Doe didn't give any meetings in 1994, which, by the way, kind of satisfies one of the prophecies. I'm not going to say which one, so unless somebody asks me. But
oh my gosh.
I just don't want to talk about it right now.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to get into that.
Sorry.
Well, I should say it then. Well, the way that I say that it's satisfying the prophecies is that there was a limit to the amount of time that the two witnesses were going to be speaking the information from the next level, from the kingdom of God, from the kingdom in the heavens.
But then how would you explain when he...
3.5 years it was talked about as taking place, or 3.5 days.
Then how would you explain the later tapes, the final exit tapes?
They weren't meetings with the public. But yeah, in a sense, that's true. But, it's the prophecies have their value, and they also
I see your
aren't
point, though.
the most accurate.
They weren't like...
Well, Doe thought he was going... at first, his first thoughts, when he got past thinking that he couldn't change anything that he had put into motion, and then when he realized that change was the name of the game, in other words, you had to have change in order to have development.
Yeah, to have growth.
Into growth, into positives, into more and more positivity by next level standards. So when he got past that part, then he started to have thoughts about, things they might do, and he got little signals in his mind of things, and he started to feel like, and you can see this progression. And Doe even talks about this tape 261, that if people could see the progression of the development of information, lessons, and everything. I'll go to read that before I continue, even if I lose track of what I was saying, because it's says a lot about, I'm not finding it right now. So, uh,
What were you talking about? The
well, I'm just going to,
progression. The progression.
yeah, that if you can see the progression of the development of their minds, because he was talking about in this tape how, uh, that to hold him and T to what they were talking about in 1970, uh, well, probably, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know to what degree, their minds opened up more and more after that, especially after the two witnesses thing happened to where they weren't shot down in the street and they were thinking that the whole mission was dead when they were in that Las Vegas hotel room. And this was like October, I think, of 1975, and the class was gathering over, headed towards Chicago, traveling by testing churches for our needs, and uh, the way that Doe told the story was that for about 3 days they thought the mission was dead because nobody was going to take them seriously, and then they realized that uh, um, you know without the thing with the felony arrest of Doe for what was called car theft, which wasn't really car theft. Um, but you can see why humans would look at it that way, of course. But um, that the two witnesses were going to be killed according to that verse in Revelation 11, and and then they were going to have a demonstration that was going to be part of the demonstration. In other words, we were thinking at the time that wherever we were, we would find out somehow that we were to gather at a certain location, and in the United States, and that would be the call to the demonstration, where they would die, their vehicles would die, and they would be, I guess, untouched for 3 days or whatever, 3.5 days, and then they would rise from that, and stand up again, and and then they would shortly after that ascend into heaven with everybody watching them, and that I think the way they thought at the time is that uh, they didn't know exactly when we would go, but they thought maybe a short time after that they would come back for us. I'm not sure exactly because they didn't really talk about this. This was like some of this, I don't know where I got it from. Maybe from the ones that were with T and Doe before I met T and Doe, because I met them in September, and there were individuals that were with them from April, the previous April, that were in campgrounds with them for days and days and days, just talking about stuff. So I got a lot of things during that time, um, from them. And then T and O would say little things about things at the time also that would reflect on that. Um, how they were misinterpreted sometimes or whatever. Well, they said things that they regretted, and I don't want to keep on going in that vein necessarily unless. But the example was what keep on getting back to was what after 3 days of thinking that the mission was dead, they they felt like, well, T and Doe, we They weren't called that at that time. I don't know how they referred to each other, but it was Bo and Peep at that point in terms of the students naming them. And our, didn't we already lose our all our credibility by what we're talking about? So why are we concerned that the felony means we lost all our credibility after Walter Cronkite came out on the news, the national news, and talked about it? That the mysterious two were found and identified. Anyway, at that point, then they said, then what's next? And they thought, well, we've got to continue on with the task. And so they went to the group of students, which was in Chicago, and they said that which I was among, and they said that we feel that the shooting down in the streets or the killing in the streets that was depicted in Revelation 11 was referring to what just happened, that we were shot down in the press. The press shot us down as being anything from the kingdom of God. Of course not. People weren't going to think that. They were the two cult figures of a UFO cult. So they were shot down, and that they're standing up again. They didn't say that any of this. They just said that was the shooting down in the streets. But that they said at that time that they understood that because they had said so much about the demonstration happening, that they fully understood why some of the individuals in the class would not want to follow with them anymore. And what Doe said about that time was that, for the most part, he said the students said, no, we don't care about that. We want to follow with you. And that's what I said in my mind as well. I didn't have any attachment to the revelation. I hardly ever looked at that. I never saw that before, actually. I didn't know what the two witnesses were at all at that time. I don't think I ever read the book of Revelation. Maybe little parts of it once in a while, some time ago, but before that. But anyway, but then later they thought about, well, maybe there still might be a demonstration. See, they were open to that happening, just the way it was said. But they didn't really know what they were doing. They were that was the time then they were gathering the first group of individuals to be in their class, and they didn't want anybody to be there. So there was no initiation because there were no standards put on anybody in the very beginning. You could say there were standards because they had certain things, but there was no way of proving those standards except for maybe the one of, cutting your hair. But you were free to grow it out again, but you were not gonna do that if you wanted to stay in the classroom, because why would you do that? If you recognize T and Doe as your teachers, which some people did and some people didn't in the very beginning. And that's why some people would drop away, because even if they did certain disciplines or whatever, change their appearance or whatever, according to what they were being given to do, because they want to do it, then they would have less and less of a reason to stay around. And that's why T and Doe weren't circulating with all the new members in 75 and 6. Sometimes not, at all. 94, Doe ended up circulating between the groups. And to meet the individuals that had joined from the meetings in 1994. But he was never public again, except as videos, and then except through the ways he did it through videos and on the internet. He was never actually, because the word prophecy means speaking to the public, really. And, that's thought to be like an in-person kind of thing. Because, of course, when those definition of terms existed, they had writing. But, what Jesus said is go to the towns, go to town by town, and if they turn you away, then go to another town, go to another family, another neighborhood or whatever. And he said, don't go door to door. And yet you have some Christians that they go door to door. Trying to convince people of things. That wouldn't be our way. That wouldn't be a next level way. Missed today's live stream, was a little bit busy, Joseph Coates, but I'll listen later tonight. Well, I forgot to read what Casey said. They put a lot of money into doing so. It predated USA Today.
Okay, good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there was some money put into the Beyond Human series, definitely, because it was put on satellite dish. You had to upload it. But the USA Today actual information, uh, it didn't predate USA Today very much, the Beyond Human series being on the satellite. But I think it was, now I forget the number because I haven't said it in a long time. $30,000, I think, for a third of a page of, it's a oversized newspaper, kind of like the New York Times is. You have these huge pages. And so a third of a page ad was $30,000, I think, the way I remember it. And we had, had jobs for a while, so we could afford it at that point. So Aaron Nathaniel says hi, and it's, how would you define a soul? What is a soul? Well, I think going to the Heaven's Gate book, and you can read the document. It's on heavensgate.com. Go to the book tab, and then whenever you can search, search, well, the table of contents, you'll see something. One of the students wrote a document about spirits and souls, incarnating and discarnating, maybe by Sunodi, and another one by Liv Odie, I think, that gives you more of an in-depth understanding of what souls are. Okay, I'm just going to give you just a little tiny view that a soul is a container that holds the beginning of a next level member. It's like a seed. And when it's grown by receiving more and more of next level mind and applying it the way that it's designed to work within us in our vehicles, with making changes and things. Okay, so It's got a type of physicality that is like plasma. That's all I can say about it in the technical um, description of it. But it also has a chip, like a computer chip. Don't call it a chip. Like a computer chip that has programs on it. Like programs meaning uh, knowledge, uh, understandings, um, recognition of things that are true. I mean, things that are true, real. That the next level exists. You know, that they're the creators of the planet and the life forms on it. That's some of what that chip has on it. But it also, and it and it can be different types of different degrees of growth of souls also, and that's even part of the process of graduating into a graduated soul would be one that actually had the strength of mind to pilot a physical body that's grown by the next level for their membership, according to what that member had grown to be able to do with that body. Because that soul body then has features, has strength of mind in order to turn on and off certain features that grown physical body has. Like one might be to turn that physical body invisible to humans. It wouldn't be invisible to necessarily somebody else in the next level, but to humans it might be invisible. That's just an example of one of the features of a next level grown vehicle. Could be. Anyway, so that's just a little, um, and those souls cannot be created by the space aliens or humans, and it can't be destroyed by humans or the space aliens, except for the way that the space aliens can influence somebody with a soul to go against the next level. And then that soul would, by its own choices, end up becoming dust again. I don't mention that in this tape, that the human kingdom is going to return to dust. Because after the next level takes those out of it, those souls out of it, and saves any spirits that they want to save, and then recycles in order to start a new experiment, because this experiment has uh, gone through all the positive directions it can go through. The harvest is over. It's still in progress, because until they actually leave, and we won't even be talking about this anymore at that time. I don't know how long that might be. It's not up for us to know. Um, as long as the information is available and people are interested in it, the next level is going to probably allow things to continue from turning into dust faster. That's the only way I can say it. Whether that turning into dust isn't necessarily a literal interpretation. We don't know what parts of the planet, uh, you know, are going to be recycled or going to become turned under by earthquakes and volcanoes and all the things that happen geologically to the planet, and what parts might not be affected. I guess anything's possible in that regard. The next level, could even take a bunch of humans that they feel are growing in the best direction by their standards, and then put them someplace on an island somewhere, and that island that provided all the foods that they would be able to eat and stuff. Anyway, and they could start an experiment there with them if there was something to be gained by that. I'm just saying some of the possibilities, because that's what Doe talked about as different possibilities, not in terms of preserving some of the humans, but in terms of making this into a next level base before it becomes a garden again for growing souls. Mind is developing also on a base because development of mind is an evolutionary process by the will of the being that's developing their mind.
I've been talking to ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah? You have anything interesting?
Yeah.
About a soul? Okay, so Aaron Nathaniel says, is the soul an outer dimensional object? Well, I don't know what that means by outer dimensional, but
Out of the dimension?
well, yeah, in the sense that we can't see it and we can't measure it. We can't know if we're touching it. We can't know. We can't know whether we're getting communication from its contents, except when it comes through a human, or better yet, a member of the next level. You know, so when there's a vehicle that well, a vehicle that's becoming all of our vehicles are potentially evolving. I say potentially because it's not automatic. And the way that we take control of our vehicles is the evidence of uh, being something that the next level is hoping that we'll do. Because then we can become a vehicle and we can pass on in the genetic strain certain realities that future generations can grow upon to actually then have vehicles that could be the vehicles that souls would return to take over in order to forward their growth into membership in the next level. So do I want to save the talk about have Odie and Arth Odie to the next one? Because it's getting kind of late.
Yeah, I'd say that.
I'm getting kind of tired too.
Yeah.
I think I made a little headway on some of the things that were in the tape. So I'm going to call it a close down of the stream. It's been good to see your faces, individuals that are repeats, and any individuals that didn't show up in the chat room. I'm glad to have your participation to whatever degree you're participating. And we'll do it again as long as we can. And I'm going to put on the screen for just a moment the next subject talked about in this tape. That includes Havodi talking. And Havodi still has his vehicle as far as I know. So good night, folks.
I want to go to the Cheesecake Factory and get dessert.
Okay, let's go.
I mean, not right now.